Now, do you want to deal with mutants outside the context of your local Walmart? Then this is the deck for you, brother. Mutant Menace. Just take a walk through any city in America right now and you're going to see literal mutants, dude. Some of them hang out at the gym, and that's the origin of the super mutants. And that's better Commander, dude. Annabelle mutants like the mutant Nick Walker himself. Anyways, we are breaking down and rebuilding this Precon. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, like, subscribe. It's free for you and helps me tremendously. Alright, let's start with the Bas Commander, the Wise Mothman. 1 black, green, and a blue for a legendary creature, insect mutant. It's a 3/3 with flying. Whenever this guy enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. Whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. It's a very weirdly worded ability, but say you mill 3 non-land cards with your rad counters. You can put a counter on 3 creatures, not 3 counters on 1 creature, brother. This is a great enabler and plays really well with rad counters and +1 counters and lends itself to a very unique deck. And the other new legend here is the Master Transcendent. 1 black, green, and a blue for a legendary artifact creature mutant. It's a 2/4. When this guy enters the battlefield, target player gets 2 rad counters. Has tap, put target creature card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control. It's still a green mutant with base power and toughness 3/3. It's a pretty neat ability, man. It only cares about mill, it doesn't really care about rad counters so much. You can mill in any way you want, brother. This guy's origin story is either that he began mutating and then he was able to spread his essence through an entire vault, or he ate 2 bags of hot Cheetos every day and just melted into his game chair. In any case, this is a pretty neat mill commander. 3 animation built right in. I'll build around this guy later, man, but I like the whole feel of this whole thing, man. Alright, let's just hit rad counters real quick so you guys don't get completely confused like I was. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose 1 life and a rad counter. This is the radiation mechanic. It's kind of neat, it's flavorful. So how about new cards in this deck? We have the commanders. We're going to keep the Mothman as the commander. Let's hit the highlights and skip the lowlights. I like this guy. Cathedral Acolyte. 1 and a green for a creature, human cleric. It's a 1/2. Each creature you control with a counter on it has ward 1. Tap, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that enters the battlefield this turn. I like this card as a way to add counters, give our bigger creatures a layer, albeit a thin layer, more of a smear of protection. Then we have this nuclear launcher here. It's got a mutant with an impossible art perspective. Dude, what happened here, man? Uriah Voth, if you're out there, buddy, spill the beans. The nuke launcher goes through the guy's neck. I don't think this card is very good anyways. Glowing one. That's what they call Taylor Swift, brother. The glowing one. I like this in this deck, and the life gain can be massive when you're losing life with your opponents because of those rad counters. Harold and Bob, they mutated themselves into a dang tree, brother. I warned them not to get intimate with a tree, but that's life in the wasteland, man. You know, people are pushing this stuff way too far. Anyways, this is a neat little sacrificial lamb that becomes a mana accelerator when it dies, provided you have a forest. Not sure if this is worth it. Have to playtest this card. Infesting Rad Roach. I used to live in South Carolina and there were some big rad roaches down there too, buddy. This is a neat recurable source of rad counters, and that's what we want in this deck. I don't like the art though. It's like a little too spot on. Then we have Jason Bright, the Glowing Prophet. 2 and a blue for a legendary creature, zombie mutant advisor. It's a 2/3. Whenever a zombie or mutant you control dies, if its power was different from its base power, draw a card. Has Come Fly With Me, a 2 generic mana, sacrifice creature, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, gains flying until end of turn. One of the very few sacrifice outlets in this deck. If you're facing some removal or a board wipe, you can translate that into some cards if you sack a mutant with a counter on it. Rampaging Yao Guy. This guy's just a mutant bear. So it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy any number of target artifacts and or enchantments with total mana value X or less. So this is kind of a neat little removal spell that would be really good in a Zaxara deck, make a Lucia Kane. It's like a Hydra, dude. Decent in a Precon environment as a threat that can take out your opponent's ramp pieces. I seem to remember the Yao Guai in the game being a little scarier than that guy, but whatever, man. Raoul, Troubleshooter, 1 blue and a black for a legendary creature, zombie mutant rogue. It's a 1/4. During each of your turns, you may cast a spell from among cards in your graveyard that were milled this turn. And as tap, each player mills a card. So this guy, I love how all the ghouls look the same. You gotta dress them up in different outfits to differentiate them. This lets you reuse some of those cards you ratted into the graveyard. Then we have this guy, the Tato Farmer. He's a zombie mutant peasant. Listen, man, this guy is landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may get 2 rad counters. Has tap, put target land card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control. So I like this guy because he hits any graveyard. So it says put target land in a graveyard. Looks exactly like Kid Rock, dude. We're milling everybody. And this is some salty Tato ramp. Feral Ghoul. This is 2 and a black for a creature zombie mutant. It's a 2/2 as Menace. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this guy. When Feral Ghoul dies, each opponent gets a number of rad counters equal to its power. I like this in this deck, man. It can get really huge in conjunction with our commander. I like these incremental drain effects in this deck. Looks a little like Joe Biden, you know what I mean? If you have a Gravecaller combo with this guy, it can get exponentially large as well. Just give all your opponents infinite rad counters, dude. Watchful Rad Stags, 2 and a green for a creature elk mutant. It's a 2/2 with Evolve. Whenever this guy evolves, create a token that's a copy of it. I love the evolve mechanic in a deck, you know, that wants to put counters on things and proliferate. Those are the Axis Deer Joe Rogan's always talking about, dude. In any case, man, this thing can get exponential fast too. You got a Hancock out here, Ghoulish Mare, 2 and a black for a legendary creature, zombie mutant advisor. It's a 2/1. Each other creature you control that's a zombie or mutant gets +X/+X, where X is the number of counters on this idiot. Has Undying. Our commander can put counters on this guy, as well as his Undying ability. There are 24 creatures this interacts with in this modified list. Great in a zombie deck that utilizes counters, which is fairly specific. Looks a little like Bradley Cooper after his facelift. Then we have Mutational Advantage. This is a pretty good card. 1 green and a blue for an instant. Permanents you control with counters on them gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to those permanents this turn, then proliferate. This is a fog with a purpose. It's a pretty decent surprise in this deck or any counters deck in these colors. This guy just bopped Joe Rogan upside the head, and that's trouble, brother. It's all hopped up on athletic greens and conspiracy theories, dude. He's gonna beat the heck out of you. Bloat Fly Swarms. Neat little card in this deck. Block, get some rad counters to spread around. If it takes 5 damage, that's 20 rad counters around the table, brother. Lily Bowen. Pretty slow mutant like most mutants you'll encounter at the Golden Corral. Kinda takes too long to get it big, but I'm interested to see how it plays. The Struggle for Project Purity is an interesting card. Draw 3 additional cards per turn. I don't know, man. That's pretty nice. Although, you have to make it to your upkeep. Then we have this guy, the Nightkin Ambusher. 2 blue and a black for a creature mutant warrior. It's a 4/4 with Ward 2. When this guy enters the battlefield, target player gets 4 rad counters. Can't be blocked as long as the defending player has a rad counter. I like this guy in the context of this Precon. He can really mess up one person in particular. I also like that he takes care of his nutrition, dude. He knows how to work those triceps, man. Looks a little like Mickey Rourke. Atomize is a bit of a pricey removal spell, but that Proliferate is very nice. Maybe not worth the 4 mana. We got Marcus and the Mutant Mayor. This guy has 3 green and a blue for a legendary creature mutant advisor. It's a 4/4 with Vigilance and Tramp Stamps. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that creature had a +1/+1 counter on it. If it doesn't, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This guy welcomes you to his town, right? Then you get eaten by a mutant. This guy's a house in this deck, especially with the Mothman putting counters on everything. Spent a lot of time on the new cards, but I like these cards. I'm going to talk about them, dude. Screeching Scorch a Beast. It's just a big old beater that loves mill. I like this in the rad counter deck because you get multiple triggers per turn cycle. It's a pretty neat card, man. Alpha Deathclaw, 4 black and a green for a creature, a lizard mutant. It's a 6/6 with Menace and Trample. When it enters the battlefield or becomes monstrous, destroy target permanent. Has Monstrosity 4 for 7 mana. This is a prime blink target, can hit any permanent, and is a big old beater. I love this card, man. I'm sure it's going to be a bulk banger for years to come. Then we have the Lumbering Mega Sloth. This is 10 green for a creature sloth mutant. It's an 8/8. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each counter among players and permanents. Has Trample. This guy enters the battlefield tapped. So I'm not a huge fan of this for 12 mana, you know what I mean? But I am a huge fan of this for like 4 mana. You know, you need a big board state for this to work. This also counts rad counters. It counts any other counters that are out there. Now this deck has a bunch of banger reprints, so let's talk about them, brother. Hardened Scales is back. It's about $3. Nice card with some really suspect art here. As a whole, the art in this set's a little funky, dude. I'm not sure what's off about it, but it's not as beautiful as some of the art I've witnessed in this game. Corpsejack Menace, Winding Constrictor play really nice with the counters theme in this deck. Fantastic includes with new art. Branching Evolutions, very pricey. It was about $10, dude, and this has gorgeous new art featuring Cardi B's WAP right on the card, man. I was a little trepidatious about putting that on a card, but it looks really evocative. Guardian Project. Commander Staple comes back with Danny DeVito on the art. Looks like a dang Muppet out there. This was another $10 card. I love looking at this fella's back. This is what peak masculinity looks like. Inexorable Tide. It's a great old card that was up around $13. Though this version may have crabs just like old Nikki G. Whenever you cast the spell, proliferate. So how the heck are we going to upgrade this thing? Well, there are 3 strategies that kind of play with each other nicely in this deck. +1 counters are great to lean into, and Kami of Whispered Hopes is great in this deck. It's a mana dork with a Heart and Scales effect that gets you more mana as it gets bigger. This little danger baby is going to be great for this deck. Then you have Incubation Druid, just needs 1 counter, which we can get off our commander's ability. It's crazy mana acceleration. Gyre Sage has Evolve, great early mana dork, and I am a huge fan of this card. Fathom Mage, look at this pretty lady out there doing her interpretive dance. This can draw a ton of cards and I like her style, dude. We have a light proliferate theme, so we added Bloated Contaminator. It's my buddy's nickname. He plays World of Warcraft a little too much. You're probably not infecting anybody out with this, but you can proliferate rad counters and +1/+1 counters. Super efficient little beater for $2. We also have Contaminant Grafter. It's just a big old Phyrexian Druid. It's a 5/5. It's got Trample and Toxic 1. You're only getting 1 proliferate per turn with this guy if you do some combat damage, which is basically what this idiot says. Looks like Fashion Week at the Met Gala. Looks like Zendaya's wearing the latest Irma Bucknard dress out there. I also slotted in Volrath because I like this card and everybody thinks he's dog doo. But I like it, you know? Seems pretty good in a deck where we're proliferating fairly often. We also have a bunch of diesel mutants with counters on them too. We're also leaning into mill, so you may want to include some light reanimator. Animate Dead is a classic, a little cheaper right now due to a recent reprint. Neat little card that can hit any graveyard. We also have the Mimeoplasm, so this guy's 5 mana for a legendary creature Ooze. It's a 0/0. So when it enters the battlefield, you may exile 2 creature cards from graveyards. If you do, it enters the battlefield as a copy of one of those cards with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the power of the other card. This can utilize any graveyard. It's really just a big reanimator spell. I like this guy because he's an amalgam of all the girls I dated, but after I dated them, you know, after they hit the wall. Looks like some damn dinosaurs, buddy. And that's it, really. Those are the themes, and you pick your budget. You know, I think you can add an Infect theme if you wanted to, or lean more into Reanimator. Could definitely use more Reanimator cards. A lot of these cards care about mill, independent of rad counters. So mill to your heart's content if you want to add some of those cards. Really lean into that. Then get mass reanimation engines online, Rise of the Dark Realms and such. But that's not really the flavor here. We basically want to keep some of the Fallout flavor, so only bopped out 11 cards or so. For some reason there were 40 lands in this deck, so we got rid of some of those and some tap lands. You know, still kept the land count relatively high at about 38. Very interesting, very fun deck, $15 upgrade, fun mutants, not the mutants ambling around the Cracker Barrel in your hometown. These are the fun mutants like the one from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. So if you like this video, do all that free stuff, like, subscribe, and if you're a mutant with a job, feel free to buy me a coffee at the link in the description. It's Nicky G from Bas Commander, signing off.